What is up, guys? The Leafs Convo podcast is back in business, presented by Oak Ridge Ford. Speaking of, here's a word from our sponsor.
Nathan Jenner here from Oak Ridge Ford with a bangin' deal from your favorite Ford dealership. Get a 5-year lease on the all-new 2020 Escape SE all-wheel drive for only $188 bi-weekly, plus HST with zero down. That's right, zero down. For a limited time, get a 55-inch 4K HD TV with the purchase of any in-stock 2020. Oak Ridge Ford, our reputation gets you here, our customer service keeps you coming back. For full details, visit oakridgeford.com.
Norm James along with Mike Jello. It is Tuesday, January 28, 2020, the day after the Leafs beat the Predators in Nashville 5-2. Mike, what was your takeaway from the game?
Good morning, Norman. Well, I think that obviously the Leafs played an effective offensive game against a team that's been struggling, that they fired Peter Laviolette, brought in John Hines. They're now under 500 under Hines. There's a lot of trouble with the Predators. Pakarene is not the goalie he used to be, and they're not scoring a lot of goals, and the Leafs were effective in jumping on them early. But I still think that the warning signs are there regarding the Leafs' defensive play. They allowed a goal 40 seconds after Nylander scored on a breakaway. I think Freddie Anderson had to be sharp and at his best, and he made 2 unbelievable saves. So obviously it's an important win because they climb closer to third place in the Atlantic and one of the wild card spots, but there are still warning signs of them needing to play a better overall defensive game if they're going to make the playoff.
Looking at the team stats, the Leafs and the Predators relatively even, but that Predators team does not strike me as one with much might, and the Leafs are going to have to step up their game even more against teams that are going to be much better than that down the stretch.
Yeah, it was a sloppy first period. I think Nashville had 15 shots on goal. And that you can say both teams were sloppy because they'd been off for over a week. I thought in the third period, the Leafs were really good in terms of possessing the puck and keeping it away from Nashville when Nashville was down 4-1. But Nashville got a goal to make it 4-2, and then really pressed the last, I'd say, 5 or 6 minutes of the third period, and that was mostly on Anderson to keep that 2-goal lead in place. And that's why I'm saying, they got Muzzin back. I think they played a little better defensively. I think they played a little better in terms of possession, but there were still those gaps where Nashville, who was not a very gifted offensive team, dominated the puck in the Toronto zone. And that's something that Sheldon Keefe is going to have to rectify if this team is going to make the playoffs.
This is the Leafs Convo podcast presented by Oak Ridge Ford in London, Ontario, oakridgeford.com. From Twitter, John Valella wants to know if Dubas would consider perhaps moving Dermott if Muzzin re-signs and Sandin becomes a full-time stalwart back on the blue line as, say, part of a deal to get a right D.
Well, Dermott can play right defense. They haven't done that. They played him mostly on the left side, but he played right defense in Erie. He played right defense with the Marlies at times. I think that they like Dermott. He was placed in the top 4 yesterday along with Tyson Barrie. I thought Tyson Barrie had a bad game. But the need for right shot defensemen, if they can't acquire a couple via free agency and trade, might be to move Dermott over to the right side if they re-sign Muzzin. But Rasmus Sandin had a great game yesterday.
Sure.
That was his 10th game. He's now burns the first year of his entry level, but I don't think anybody cares about that if he plays like he did yesterday.
John Valella reaching out on Twitter. You can do the same at I am Norman James, at Mike in Buffalo, at the Leafs Convo. Follow all 3 of those accounts. Rasmus Sandin, his first NHL goal, plus an assist. William Nylander, 23 goals on the season now. He got a helper as well. Zach Hyman, 2 points. Jason Spezza with a little snipe action too. So offensively, this was fun. This is the kind of stuff that we really got excited about when the Leafs were on that run, because offensively, again, they're top 3 in the league, maybe the best team in the NHL. But there's just so much other stuff that needs to be cleared up as this team ventures towards really difficult days ahead, because those Atlantic Division Savages are waiting for them. Darcy wants to know if there are any new rumblings in terms of acquisitions before the trade deadline, and that's still a month away. The balance between players the Leafs could have with term and youth on their side versus rentals, whichever way Kyle Dubas wants to go will depend on how the team performs over the next few weeks ahead.
Well, the thing that clouds any trade picture occurred last night with Kasperi Kapanen not coming back after the first period. I know that David Pagnotta for the fourth period said that Kapanen was available, but again, it's the same mantra that was repeated by Bob McKenzie and Elliot Friedman. The Leafs are not trading a Kapanen, Janssen, or Kerfoot for a rental. They will trade them for somebody under contract, somebody who they can retain for 2 or 3 years, preferably a right-handed defenseman or a defenseman who can play the right side. I don't know the extent of Kapanen's injury. I know that Sheldon Keefe after the game indicated that the x-rays were negative, so it's probably a soft tissue injury, but we don't know the extent of the injury, and if he's out for a few weeks, then the likelihood of him being traded goes down significantly.
Mike, you brought up Tyson Barrie, and his name was brought up on social media frequently last night. I was on tweeting, and yeah, when you do interact with people, you do gain more followers and you do spread the word about the podcast. I used to do it all the time. I don't have as much time to do it these days. It is a lot of fun, but Tyson Barrie's name was brought up quite a bit. A lot of people identifying his game to be lackluster and leaving a lot to be desired. There's nothing you can do about it now, and there's no point dredging up decisions that have been made and that we're seeing the results of. But do you think the Tyson Barrie for Nazem Kadri swap at this point was still worth it?
You have to factor in Kerfoot, and I think Kerfoot's a good forward. It was a luxury that the Leafs had a second-line center playing third-line center last year. But if you remember, Kadri did not have a great year last year, and then he screwed the Leafs in the playoffs with his lack of discipline. And I think it was time for Kadri to go. But the return, if you remember, there was a possibility of him going to Calgary, and he negated that deal, and that was Mark Jankowski and TJ Brody. And I'm pretty sure Jankowski still doesn't have a goal. So in terms of the two deals, Kerfoot and Barrie was a better return. Now, the problem is that Tyson Barrie is not going to be Shea Weber. He's not a defensive defenseman. He's a puck mover. He is an offensive defenseman. He's a power play quarterback. And stupidly, Mike Babcock didn't utilize his abilities as a power play quarterback and kept Morgan Riley in that position. And, their power play improved dramatically when they did put Barrie in with Sheldon Keefe. The problem now is everybody's expecting Tyson Barrie to step up and be the type of defenseman that he isn't with Morgan Riley out. He can only be what he is. He's an offensive defenseman, a puck carrier, and defensively, he's in the Jake Gardner category. He makes errors in his defensive zone. His defense, his best defense is his offense, carrying the puck up the ice. Sometimes he doesn't make good decisions. Sometimes he gives away the puck. We saw that yesterday. We've seen it throughout the year. He's not going to change. He's 27, 28 years old. He is what he is. But, you can quibble about the deal, but I don't think there was much better out there. And I think that they decided after the playoffs last year that Kadri had to be moved.
Kadri with 17 goals, 31 points in 46 games. Regardless of what happened in the playoffs, I think he was going to be moved. We know the Leafs were trending away from anyone with any physical ability, any sandpaper, and moving towards the speed and skill. Not to say that Nazem Kadri didn't have those attributes in spades, but just didn't seem like the kind of guy who would work under the Kyle Dubas regime. And it remains to be seen whether what Kyle Dubas is doing ultimately bears fruit or if he'll have to go back to the drawing board and retool a little bit. I think it's going to be the latter, but I would happily be proven wrong if that was indeed the case. So the Leafs are into Dallas tomorrow. How do you think the Stars will commemorate Jason Spezza's time in Big D?
I'm sure that he'll get a video because he was there for a long time, and he was a well-liked player there. I have to say, the decision of Babcock to play Spezza as a part-time player just gets worse by the day when you see what Spezza does.
He's been great.
He's been great. And, he's got 7 goals in limited ice time, and he's probably going to end up in double figures, and you're paying $700,000 for it. I would sign up for Jason Spezza for another year at a marginal increase if he's interested in playing another year in his career, because I think he's been a good add and a good veteran presence in that locker room for a team that has a lot of youth. But I'm sure Dallas will welcome him with open arms, and I'm sure that they were very happy to rid themselves of the $7 million salary because they used it to sign Joe Pavelski. Tomorrow, though, is going to be a completely different game because Dallas, under Jim Montgomery and now under Rick Bowness, are a very strapped down defensive team. Got one of the better goaltending tandems in the league with Bishop and Khudobin. They've got a great defense. Actually, their problem has been scoring goals, which is surprising with Sagan and Ben and Pavelski, but it's probably going to be a tight contest. The Leafs don't exactly play great against good defensive clubs. They may get frustrated, take more chances, and then you see counterattacks. But
intriguing. I'm excited to see how it plays out. I want the Leafs to play against the very best, the toughest teams in the league, and see if they can rise to the occasion, because everything between here and the playoffs is a trial. The jury's still out. Mike, last word to you.
The most important thing yesterday in that victory was the Leafs getting off on the right foot when it came to the second half with 33 games left. Now they're 2 points behind third and 2 points behind the wild card. They're in this race. They have to play like they did yesterday, carry that forth for the final 32 games. And if they do, they probably make the playoffs.
Thanks, Mike. Talk to you soon.
Thanks, Norm.